now. If it was a little more expensive, maybe there wouldn't be quite so many chairs we'd have to walk around and tables. I don't want there to be no chairs and tables, but I think there's a balance, and we might be over that balance right now. And then secondly, I am concerned about the televisions and audio, and would hope that we can do something about enforcement with that.
So I think that what I'm hearing is that we have an expectation that staff is going to be bringing something back to us shortly. And I think if we're all comfortable, I'm ready to hear a motion.
I move that the letter be referred to city staff.
Second.
So I have a motion by Councillor Williams, a second by Councillor Jones. Do we have any questions on the motion? Anyone from the public wishing to speak on that? All right, seeing none, I'm looking for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. So this will, we'll go back to staff. We will get a draft of something back and just keep following along.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so our second item tonight on our agenda, Councillor Williams, consideration for an ordinance amendment requiring dogs with a record of vicious dog offenses to be muzzled when in public. I'm going to allow Councillor Williams to address his letter to us from the dais tonight. I do believe we have the dog owner that was referenced in the letter here as well. Yes, would you mind coming forward, and if you can just take a seat? When Councillor Williams is done, we'll be looking to you to speak as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have much to say before introducing Deborah LeBlanc, just to say that, you know, she came to me after this horrible incident happened when her small dog was attacked, and, you know, that's not the kind of thing we like to see in Keene, so hopefully, you know, today we can think about, you know, what are some ways that we can prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. So with that, I will hand it over to Deb.
Hi, Deb, and could you please also just give us your full name and address for the minute taker?
Yep. My name's Deborah LeBlanc, and I live at 68 Gilsum Street.
Okay. And do you want to describe to us what sort of incident happened and what you're interested in seeing the council do?
Sure. So this is an emotional topic for me, so I'm going to
Yes,
decompress here.
This whole environment can be really stressful, so just feel free to like take a pause and
Thank you.
if you need to.
So December 7th, Thursday morning, did my usual morning walk. I walk all over Keene. I have been in the city about 2.5 years now. I absolutely love living in Keene. I have lived all over the state, and I really enjoy this area. Up until December 7th. At that point, I became very discouraged. I was walking down Court Street, going in a southerly route, took a left on North Street. I was on the sidewalk and very quickly noticed that there was a dog sitting by its owner, staring at us. And at that point, I got a feeling, and I decided to move into the street to circumvent them. The other owner had his back to me. He was bagging dog waste, and as I was going into the road, I was starting to say, hey, we're gonna go around you so that they wouldn't be startled. And that dog took off like a bat out of hell, pardon my language, and it was leashed. My dog was leashed. I was in the middle of North Street, and it just flew at us. It grabbed my dog. She's 30 pounds. That dog must be at least 60 to 70 pounds. And it clamped on her front leg, dragged her, shook her. She was screaming. I was screaming. I don't know how long the whole event occurred. I willingly stuck my hand in the dog's mouth to try and pry the jaw open. The owner also was trying to pry the dog's jaw off my dog's leg. I tried a few different methods to get the dog off my dog, and was unsuccessful. Finally, another person came from behind me, and the three of us managed to get the dog's jaw off of my dog's leg. I noticed there were a bunch of cars because we were in the middle of North Street. At that point, I was just in shock. My dog was going into shock. A bystander asked if she could help, and I said, please just drive us home. I was probably about 5 blocks from my house. So she drove me to my house, and she attempted to call the police. They wouldn't take the information. They said that I had to call. At that point, I mean, I just wanted to get my dog to the vet. Her whole leg was just laid out, and by the time I got to the vet and got her squared away, they rushed her into surgery. I had a couple of bites on my thumb, and I drove to urgent care where a friend called. She met me there and called the police department to get the rabies status of the other dog, and was told that she could not get that information. And I would have to personally go down to the police department and present my hand for pictures. So after I was treated and bandaged, I drove to the police department, and I declined to undress my hand at that point, and talked to the officer, and was told the information I needed to get the police report. Like that was a magic answer to everything, because I didn't really care about the police report at that point. I cared about my dog's life, who was in surgery. And I just kept saying, oh, you know, my brain is in shock right now. I just really don't understand what's going on. And I recall after that, I spoke to the same officer on Friday. This happened Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Friday, I called a couple of times because I didn't know what the protocol was. I've never been bitten by a dog before or been involved in a dog mauling, and let alone have my own dog be, you know, part of it. And I asked for rabies information and was not given any. State law says within 24 hours you were supposed to be given rabies information. I was not given any information until I called a third time on Saturday afternoon, and finally was put on hold and came back and said, oh, well, the dog is registered with the city, but there's no rabies information. So I have to assume that the dog has not been vaccinated. So I ended up in the emergency room on Saturday night getting injections into my thumb. Erroneously, because the dog was vaccinated, but I was given wrong information. So that's a whole nother thing. I put an email through the city site, and Lieutenant Maxfield came to my home January 10th and informed me that the dog that bit my dog had had a previous fine in September, where it had started another dog fight at Pride Fest and bit another dog at that point in time. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So this same dog who had been given a fine, the person paid that fine, but then went ahead and is just able to roam around the streets like nothing ever happened. So I feel that dogs that have a repeat incidents should have, other than a civil fine, some kind of recourse. Because right now, Lieutenant Maxfield told me that there is no ordinance in the city of Keene for dogs that are vicious. So a person can get a civil fine, pay that fine, and can go right downtown with that same dog and walk around like nothing ever happened. So if any of you are dog owners, you can encounter a dog-aggressive, vicious dog downtown and not know it, and all of a sudden, your dog will be laid out just like mine was. And this is my granddaughter, she's 2. If I had been walking that morning with her, I shudder to think what would have happened. So something needs to change. There's got to be some kind of city ordinance, because this is very thickly settled, and there are a lot of people that walk around with their dogs. And if you want to have outdoor cafes, you know, with people seating outside, it's not going to be to your benefit to have dog-aggressive, vicious dogs walking around downtown.
Well, I really appreciate you going through that experience with us. I'm sure it was not easy. It's still fresh, and
It is.
I'm sure that it's an emotional experience. I think there are a lot of us that do have dogs and have had different experiences. I did see, I think it's included in our packet, there is a copy, I'm just going to pull it up, of the version of our nuisance, menace, and vicious dog section of our code, and it does not speak to what was originally in Counselor Williams' letter, but it does speak to the types of incidences that escalate the categorization. And I think that outside of the incident that happened with you and Suzette, I believe it is,
Yes.
we need to discuss this more as a holistic approach for the city. There were a lot of individual things that happened in the story that you just spoke to us about.
There were a few points,
That
yes.
if, that I think you could potentially reach out to the city manager to address about the circumstances in which something may not have happened. We're not in a capacity where we can address those this evening, but I think to talk about this in a general sense is more appropriate. But I do thank you for bringing it all to our attention.
If I may, there's just one more point that I wanted to bring up, was that during this whole incident, and what made it even worse, was that there was no animal control officer to guide me and help me during this whole process. I spoke to the new animal control officer this morning, and I'm not going to go into our conversation, but she felt that this was a good place to be and a good opening of a discussion that needs to be had.
Yes, great, thank you. So I guess I'm going to look to the city attorney and the city manager for staff comments on where your thoughts are on this, and even if you want to address any of the incidences that may or may not have occurred over the course of that story.
Sure. Thank you. Right. So, as you pointed out, yes, we have Section 10, which is in the packet, that deals with nuisance, menace, and vicious dogs. I wanted to jump to state law as well, because Councilor Williams' letter does reference how we are authorized to regulate dogs. And I did pull that chapter and look through it. It's a very interesting chapter of all the things we can do with regulating dogs, and there's licensing cats in there and everything. There is 46639, which gives us the authority, us municipalities, to regulate the licensing and restraining of dogs as we deemed reasonable. And I know we discussed, at least mentioned in Councilor Williams' letter, about muzzling as an option. And that is one specific thing that we probably cannot do, because also in Chapter 46, there is specifically muzzling talked about as being something the municipalities can regulate only during a rabies epidemic. The one thing we talked about. Go figure. But it does still leave open all of the other things that we may deem reasonable. And as you look through the ordinance that we have on the books, of course, there's the fines that we've decided that are reasonable. There's regulations there for dogs at large. So there's a big difference between a dog who's on a leash and acts the way that we've heard described tonight, and a dog that's at large. Of course, you know who the owner is and can recount the story and hold somebody accountable. Dogs at large doesn't seem to be as much of a problem, or at least something we've addressed. So then walking through our city code a little bit more closely, there are the two parts, like I said, the at-large and nuisance, menace, or vicious dogs section. As far as solutions for what our code gives us, when you're talking about at-large, which again doesn't come up as far as I know very often, our code does allow the impounding of the dog, which is very strange. The police can seize the dog, hold the dog at an animal shelter, and if there's, I believe at the end of that, you can humanely dispose of the dog, which is tragic. And that option is not available on the other path, which is the nuisance, menace, and vicious dogs. That just ends in the fines and in going to district court after a number of offenses. As far as other options that are given to us under the RSAs, there's kind of similar options where police can take custody of a nuisance dog, so sort of the same approach as the 2 tracks. If we adopted that, then it is also in the RSAs a violation, which is a criminal level offense, the lowest type of criminal offense, when you do violate what we have right now, the city code, which probably ends you in the same place anyway, which is district court. And then there's also the authority to adopt a leash law, which is kind of like a wholesale thing you adopt from the state statutes. So in looking there, I didn't see any other great solutions for us for what we've got, but I do go back to 46639, which says anything reasonable, which, as you know now, not muzzling, unfortunately. So
Okay. So from the city's standpoint, it sounds like outside of what we've written, our greatest tool would be to increase fines on the books. Do we have any questions so far from the committee? Counselor Haas?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You mentioned that we can have the police seize a vicious dog and hold it and impound it, and under worst-case scenario,
Only if the dog is at large, which means does not have an owner.
only if it's at large. Could we exploit that section to be a dog that's not at large?
I believe that's tied to the RSA, so no. The RSA, our city code tracks very, very closely with some of the things. We've basically just pulled sections of the RSA we liked and popped it into our city code, so we have to only act with the authority that the state gives us.
And I hope with our new animal control officer, we can really emphasize these. I find the punishment for a second bite to be incredibly lame here. In this, either increase the fine significantly to a punishment level, or seize the dog. Some places have a 2-bite rule where that's it, you're done. The dog is a hazard to humanity and other dogs. I had a vicious dog, and well, we kept him under control. He was muzzled anytime he was outside the house and on a very short leash, and it was horrible walking him because it was total attention to what he was.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he met his end.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I mean, we all have, I think, particular stories relating to this, and I've been on both sides of this. I've had a dog who was a dog aggressive. She never bit another dog, but she definitely wanted to, and I had to take responsibility for that, and I had to make sure that she was leashed appropriately and that I walked her in places that were safe for her to be, and I have a dog who would never bite anyone. But what I can tell you is that when you do have that dog, you tend to err on the side of all dogs behave that way. And we have a lot of people who allow their wonderful, loving, easygoing dogs off leash when people do have dogs that have behavioral concerns on leash who are trying to be good responsible dog owners, and there's no recall. And so we've heard from both sides of this where we've had people who have dogs on leash with dogs who are off leash and having problems getting owners to be responsible to recall their friendly dogs. And so there are lots of cases where this topic continues to come up. I wish that there was a resolution for us to get to. I'm hoping that we can hear from our animal control officer at some point with some ideas. I actually spoke to my dog trainer. He obviously is a dog trainer, and he's going to say training, training, training. And I don't know if that's something that our city can promote, not directly to anyone specifically, but that we can encourage that, so that when people have incidents, they will have some resources to help, and that we could facilitate that. And, you know, we can get to a place where we have some education going on in the community. Counselor Ormerod?
I was thinking also about the education. I think there's a little bit more we could do to define what we can and cannot do. Hopefully, there's something that can be done for this, but we do need to educate people, owners, where they get their licenses at the office here, the veterinarians. And it occurred to me that if the downtown vision plays out, we're gonna have more people with bikes concentrated downtown. And we will have more people with dogs and cats walking, and that's really what we want. I was attacked by a pit bull riding my bike. I used to be it did not happen here, it happened in another city. But I think I am no longer an avid biker. But I think that if we look at those things, I think we should explore something that's enforceable.
Thank you for all this good discussion. Disappointed that, you know, apparently muzzling is off the table. Maybe we can talk to our state representatives about that. Perhaps we could require leashes, or at least say you're not allowed to let them off the leash. One of the important things about this isn't just educating, you know, the dog training, but it's educating the owner and really putting, you know, the burden on them. I wonder if, I like the idea of higher fines, but, you know, maybe those fines could be discounted if they go towards dog training. And, you know, another thought I had was, you know, perhaps as we license these dogs, if there is a problem dog, maybe it should have a special color tag, maybe like an orange tag, just to let people know, keep your distance from this dog. That's something we could probably do. So those are my thoughts right now.
Thank you, Counselor. I definitely appreciate that. Counselor Jones?
Thank you. I'm somewhat humbled because of the fact that we can't do something. But if there's one thing I can ask of staff is, years ago, we used to have presentations from the various departments on some of the specialty skills that people do. And right now, if you ask the city councilors what an animal control officer does, you'll get 15 different answers. And I think it would be good for us to know what is the job of, like I have some neighbors who thought they get wildlife in their house, they can call the animal control officer. No, that's an act of nature. You don't do that. Just to educate the public and us as what we can call that officer for, I think would be, would help move things along.
City Manager?
Yeah, that's a great idea. She's brand new.
I know.
So we didn't have one for a period of time because we were recruiting for a replacement, and we did find a great one. So she has some great experience, including dog training experience, and she wasn't available for this evening, but I certainly can arrange for a time for her to come in and talk about what the animal control officer does.
And I wouldn't want to scare her off right away.
No, please don't do that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, if a dog has a license with the city, a current license, they have their rabies. Because our city clerk's office will not register that dog without proof of their rabies vaccinations. Most of those rabies vaccinations are coming, those certificates are coming straight from the veterinary's office to the clerk's office.
Yes.
And that also lets us know if someone hasn't registered their dog, because we will follow up with someone once we get a certificate for their rabies. And so to clarify that, if someone has if you have an issue with a dog, if they have a current tag on through the city of Keene, they have their rabies.
That's reassuring.
It's
So,
at
I
least
mean,
clarifying.
And it might, I don't know how searchable the database is, but I just registered my dog, and I was upset that she was just at the vet, and her rabies expires in like April, And I was like, why did they? But I found out because I could see the date on the clerk's office website. Counselor Ormerod.
Thank you. I thought I heard to say that we might be able to improve the fine structure.
Yes, for sure.
That's what we can do.
That's what we can do.
Can we revoke a license for a dog with 1 or 2 offenses, or can we refuse to license a dog? Or does that get us in trouble with the state?
Right, I don't, they're in the same chapter, but they're not tied together. The licensing, like the city manager references, deals with the vaccination and just registering it. So it doesn't get revoked for violations of the other portion of the statute.
Okay.
All right, so do we have any more questions?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. What's the penalty for not licensing your dog?
We do have a member of the clerk's office
Muzzling,
here.
perhaps?
No, right. No, so you actually get a list from the city clerk's
Oh,
office,
that's
and we
true.
shame everyone who's on that list that we know.
Yes, so if
But
you
there's
were a
it's a
counselor
civil
with a
forfeiture,
dog, make sure you're
and
not on the
I
list.
don't remember the amount of the fine for non-licensers. Terry might know.
Terry Hood, City Clerk's Office. The question was, how much is the forfeiture fine for an unlicensed dog? It is $25.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I want to go to the public and see if there's anyone who'd like to speak about this topic tonight. Yes, can you come forward? Name and address for the minute taker, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Giacomo, 615 Hurricane Road. I came to talk about my festival to get a permit for it, which, by the way, dogs are not allowed at festivals. So that dog actually violated multiple rules, first through the biting and then for actually being at the festival to begin with the project. Anyways, all that aside, I think that really the travesty with this whole incident is twofold. One is the actual attack. The second is the days after the attack when we have a resident that is scrambling to try to find out what to even do. And I'm wondering if that's something that can happen with registration, that if it's possible to send out a little brochure or something with registration of a dog, with licensure of a dog, saying, if you get attacked, here's who to call, something like that. Or if your dog gets hit by a car or something, this is who to call. Just a key point sheet that it'd be easy enough to whip something like that together. It's a 3rd page, and it won't actually help the incident itself, but at least hopefully it can help the resolution get happening a little bit quicker.
Well, and I also had a similar thought, so thank you for sharing that. I think that we have this structure for nuisance menace dogs, and I was unaware of the specifics, and I've been a dog owner in the city for a long time. So I think when you register your dog, maybe, and I get all of my communication from the clerk's office through email, and that's a free way for us to communicate with dog registrants. Is there some sort of communication sheets that we could put together through IT and have sent out to folks who are registered to give them that specifics about maybe introduce our new animal control officer, give this information out, and then maybe regularly do that?
Yes, so the emails that you're getting from the clerk's office are automated emails that come from our billing system.
Okay.
So we would be somewhat limited in terms of additional information that we could add to those, although I do think we would have the opportunity to provide additional information in a separate email and just get some of those email addresses and
I was going to
provide-
say, just use that list
Yeah.
to send out
Yeah.
additional documentation.
Yeah, I think we do have that
Okay.
ability.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? All right, seeing none. I think we've given this staff a little bit of direction about some things that we'd be interested in. I would be ready for a motion.
I would move, I turn my mic on first. I would move to recommend accepting the communication on consideration for ordinances requiring dogs with a record of vicious dog offenses to be muzzled when in public as informational.
Second.
I have a motion by Counselor Jones, second by Counselor Arnott. Any questions on that motion?
Just,
Counselor Jones?
even though I did say informational, we did give some movement to the staff.
Yes. Anyone else? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. And thank you for coming and sharing your story tonight. And I do want to see us continue to have these conversations and make some progress on this. All right, so our third item tonight is, I think actually, I've got to look at my full agenda. I'm going to take 3 and 4 together so we can try to move along. Both of these items are in regards to the Keene Swamp Bats request to discharge fireworks for the Independence Eve celebration on July 3rd, 2024, and on June 5th, 2024, and on July 30th, 2024. I believe we will probably have separate motions for each of these items, but we're going to talk about it all at once. Welcome to the table.
Kevin Watterson, reside at 10 Westview Avenue, Keene, New Hampshire.
Thank you.
Traditionally, I appear before you this time of year requesting community funding for our July 3rd Independence Eve fireworks. Historically, this came about a little over 20 years ago when a loose collaborative relationship between the city and the Swamp Bats, we agreed to take this on. It requires anywhere from 50 to 70 volunteers for a crowd in the 4,000 to 5,000 range. Very family-oriented, and we're going to do it again this year. So that is my reason for being here.
Well, thank you so much. I know we've had conversations with you on a regular basis every year, and I believe we did have some changes in our motion to include an opening for a rain date for the Independence Day. City Manager, do you have some additions?
Yeah, just a clarification. So tonight we have 2 items related to licenses for firework displays.
Yes.
The request related to community funding to support the
Yes.
event comes through a separate process.
Yes.
During the budget process, we do get requests, and you'll see recommendations related to community-funded events.
Yes, so tonight, the piece that we're working on is just allowing the license for the display itself, and I
Okay.
think finance hears the request for the community funding.
Okay?
But I, do you have anything to add as far as, like, all the protocols have been met and staff is comfortable with the event the way it occurred last year?
Yes.
Did it occur last year? Did we find a rain date for you?
Yes.
We had a loose one. Yeah, we did.
Yes, okay.
We don't buy rain insurance because there are so many stipulations. We'd rather go without it.
Yeah, gotcha.
So we did. I mean, I did appear at a meeting last week. We did talk at length about a tentative rain date, so that it wouldn't, if it rained again, we wouldn't be a last minute scramble. And we do have that date.
Okay, great. Any questions from the committee on this one? No?
I have a question on protocol.
Just a second, Councilor Jones, your hand was up first.
No.
Oh, Councilor Ormond, go ahead.
For this, we discussed these both together. Do they
Yes.
need to be read separately?
So I read both line items on the agenda. We'll be taking 2 separate motions.
Okay, read by the same person?
It is up to you. There's going to be a lot of reading tonight to go around.
All right. Are we ready for a motion?
Not yet. We're going to hear from the public first. Any questions? Are we all set from the committee? Or Councilor Jones, you want to?
Okay. First of all, when I chaired this committee for like 19 years, you've always come before me, and you've always been great, Kevin. And the part you left out was the Rotary Club used to do the 4th of July fireworks, and they couldn't staff it anymore. And you came in at the last minute and put this together with a great presentation. And for that, I'm still thankful for that for many years ago, for you and the Swamp Bats for stepping up and all your volunteers. It's a great thing for the city. I did ask at the council meeting, and I was the one who brought up the question about the rain date, only because when there is a rain date and we don't have a committee meeting and we have to suspend the rules, it doesn't give the public any time to speak to it. And years ago, everyone loved fireworks, and now, and I still love fireworks, and everybody does, a lot of people do, but we get calls of people with sensitive dogs. We get calls from people with PTSD and various things like that. And that's why we like to have the public process and not suspend the rules. And I understand where you are now, that you said there's no, you would need the insurance, so that's why you don't want to do it. But other than that, I agree with the motions, and I wish you a
I'm
great
totally
season.
on board with your thinking, and we can make that tentative rain date work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Council Williams.
I'm known as the council grump when it comes to fireworks. You know, I thought fireworks were really cool when I was a kid. These days, I think there's just too many fireworks, too many opportunities for fireworks. It's not the special thing it used to be. It pollutes, it freaks out dogs, you know, it scares autistic children. I'm not a fan, but I'm not, you know, total stick in the mud. So I will support this one, but my feeling is that every organization ought to get one fireworks show per year, max. And so I'll support this one, but the next two I'm going to vote against.
Thank you,
Okay.
Counselor.
I appreciate that. I will tell you, the reason for the June 5th fireworks is past, historically, the Swamp Bats kind of just get their season going. We play 44 games. And our sponsor for that night, who happens to be here on another capacity tonight, Monadnock Ford, said, why don't we do opening night with a bang? You know, let's start off opening night this season in a different way than we've done in the past. And so we thank Vadim and Larry for that thought, and we said, we'll do it. Atlas is going to supply the fireworks at a much reduced price so we can afford to do it, as opposed to July 3rd. And that's how we got here on July 5th,
And
June 5th, excuse me.
And I understand that, and to Counselor Williams as well, like, I fully appreciate what you're saying, and unlicensed events we have many, many more complaints about them. At least if it's going through the council process, I feel like the community members in the area that have sensitivities have at least a moment to prepare, relocate, be somewhere else, you know, or brace for the event rather than it's happening to them. So I appreciate the fact that you have always come before us and that these were not surprises. We do get a lot of surprise fireworks events in the city. But I would like to see is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this tonight? All right. Oh, you would like to? Oh, come on up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to agree with Council Williams. I think fireworks are outdated, old-fashioned, bad for the environment, and I think we should move on and maybe do something like drones or something electronic that doesn't disturb the wildlife that can't get out of this area when there is a fireworks show coming. Just my opinion.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we're going to come back to the committee. Anyone have any other questions for me tonight? Counselor Haas?
Thank you, Chair. This old stick in the mud jumps on that bandwagon. I'm kind of tired of fireworks. They're pretty, they're nice, but I go to bed earlier than that, and it just wakes me up. The things that are done with drones are amazing these days, and there is a future that way for sky displays. But I call on Councilor Williams, myself, and Ms. LeBlanc that we should get involved with the volunteer group and work to make changes in that fashion.
That would be great. I would love to see that. That would actually probably draw some folks out if we could do that in a future year.
I'll continue, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. I would like to move to recommend that the Keene Swamp Bats be granted permission for the discharge of display fireworks on Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024, on Alumni Field at no later than 10 p.m., and reserving a rain date to be determined in conjunction with city staff in the event of inclement weather. Said permission is subject to the following conditions: the signing of a revocable license and indemnification agreement, that the Keene Swamp Bats provide a certificate of liability insurance with the City of Keene listed as an additional insured in the amount of $1 million, that the fireworks vendor also provide a certificate of liability insurance with the City of Keene listed as an additional insured in the amount of $1 million. Submittal of a signed letter of permission from South 29 for the use of their property, and obtainment of a state fireworks permit. In addition, the petitioner agrees to comply with any recommendations of city staff. The petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of any city services over and above any amount of city funding allocated in the FY25 community events budget. Said payment shall be made within 30 days of the date of invoicing.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Haas, second by Counselor Ormerod. So this is in regards to the Independence Eve, July 3rd fireworks display. Does anyone have any questions on that motion? I know that was a lot. All right, anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And this one is unanimous. I'm going to move on to the next date, which would be for June 5th and July 30th. Counselor Haas, do you want to read those? Are you comfortable reading that into the record?
I was going to ask Councilor Jones if he could beat my timing on it, but if he can't, I'll be happy to make the motion.
What's that? Yeah, go ahead, Counselor Jones. Let's try.
I would move to recommend that Keene Swamp Bats be granted permission for discharging of display fireworks on the following dates: Wednesday, June 5, 2024, and Tuesday, July 30, 2024, on Alumni Field at no later than 10 p.m., subject to the following conditions: the signing of a revocable license and indemnification agreement that the Keene Swamp Bats provide a certificate of liability insurance with the city of Keene listed as additionally insured for the amount of $1 million, that the fireworks vendor also provide a certificate of liability insurance with the city of Keene listed as additional insured in the amount of $1 million, submittal of a signed letter of permission from SAU 29 for the use of their property, and obtainment of a Class B fireworks permit for each display date. In addition, the petitioner agrees to comply with any recommendation of city staff. This permission is conditional upon the petitioner absorbing charges for any city services provided. Said payment shall be made within 30 days of the date of invoicing.
I'll second in that he did a much better job of reading it than I did.
I have a motion by Counselor Jones, second by Counselor Haas. Any questions on that motion? And this one is for the dates again of June 5th and July 30th. Anyone from the public? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And opposed? That's 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. Item number 5 on our agenda this evening, Charlotte and David Lesser, noise disturbance from commercial vehicle generator at 58 Grant Street. And I believe we have Connie Joyce with us here to speak to this issue tonight. Thank you for waiting around. I saw you here earlier. We've all had a lot of time in this room tonight.
Long night for everybody. Charlotte and David Lesser are in Arizona, and I'm a neighbor, and this has affected me too. So I think you all got the letter from them, and I'd like to just go over a couple of points for the public. And that would be that in the fall of 2023, a large tractor trailer cab appeared at 58 Grant Street. David and Charlotte own 48 Grant Street, and I own a 3-family directly across at 55 Grant Street. I live at 81 Grant Street. So this is a rental property, absentee people who live in California. So David approached this in a very proactive way. He called the police first and asked them to speak to the renter about the noise and air pollution issue. And they did visit the neighbor, but they let us know there was nothing that they could do about it, since they didn't think it was under any current noise ordinance at the city. Then we did call the owner and talk to the owner and explain the situation to them. Then the next step was to contact Bobby Williams, our counselor, who was kind enough to come down immediately while David was there and witness the noise and the pollution. And I think that Bobby can speak to the fact that it's just overwhelming. And it goes day after day, night after night, as long as that cab is there charging its generator. And then it disappears on a long haul trip somewhere, and then it comes back again. So I'm very pleased that you were able to do that, Bobby, and witness that experience. So both David's apartment has 2. I have 2 of my tenants that work at home, and they just can't believe that there's nothing that can be done to restore the peace and quiet in a residential neighborhood. It actually spews fumes for a long period of time. It's totally unacceptable in a residential neighborhood to have a commercial vehicle with a generator running all the time and creating that kind of noise and disruption in the neighborhood. So when he comes back again, I'm sure that the noise will continue and the problem will be there. And we feel that we have no recourse and we'd like you to bring this before the full council and ask them to examine the ordinance so that we have some way of preventing this from continuing. That's it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for getting us started. I know that staff is going to talk to us a lot about the chronology as well and get us up to speed on where they're at currently, and then we can talk about what we can do moving forward.
All right. And Bobby is a witness.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Jesse Round's joining us. Also, I would like to point out, I believe if you look in your packet this evening, that we do actually have a copy along with the letter of the city's current noise and vibration ordinance that's in our city code.
Good evening, councilors. Jesse Rounds, Community Development Director. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the chronology or the series of events, why the police may not have been able to appropriately affect this, and how community development is the right place to come. And we encourage people who experience this to call our department, and we would be happy to go out and look into this issue. So the original call, at least according to our records, came in right around Thanksgiving of last year. And our housing inspector, who is also our code enforcement officer with respect to noise, went out on site and did observe that the vehicle was running and spoke to a number of people, had been running 24 hours a day, and spoke to the resident whose cab, and thank you for saying cab, I've been calling it a tractor for the last 6 weeks, and the cab of the tractor trailer was running this generator. Spoke to the owner of the vehicle, said you can't run it all the time. We have, outside of the noise ordinance, which is under the power of the police, they are the enforcers of that. We have a separate enforcement authority in the zoning code, Article 17.2.3, noise and vibration. That's in the Land Development Code, which is Chapter 100 of the City Code of Ordinances. It's a bit more specific in some ways, a little bit broader as well. So it allows us to look into both noises that are both continuous and intermittent, which is something that's not that clear in the noise ordinance. And we took a sound measurement, found it was a problem, told him he couldn't park there and overnight. And so we figured, okay, we've addressed this problem. We then actually received a complaint the next time he was there that he was just running during the day. So we went back out and said, you can't just run all the time. Again, assuming that it was violating our decibel levels, which I'll get to in a second. And so we issued a warning and he stopped. And so what I would encourage is, if this continues to happen where he's running it for hours at a time during the day, please contact our office, 603-352-5440, and we will go out there, we will take a measurement, we will, at this stage, we can issue tickets straight off to the tenant. And this is really effective because we know he's there because he's running his cab generator. What's really supposed to happen is he can park there. It's his way to get home. Our understanding is that what he's doing is he's stopping there, running it to replenish batteries, and then driving off, parking somewhere, and he gets a ride home from his partner. That's fine, except that you're still disturbing the peace, according to our noise and vibration language. And so we're there, is I guess what I want to say is we're here to answer that call, and we can go out, we can issue tickets. But what we prefer to do is talk to the resident and say, and try and find an alternative solution. So we're happy to do that. I'm going to take a moment and just say that in digging into this, our housing inspector and I really feel like the noise ordinance, or the noise section of our nuisance ordinance, which is within the zoning code, is not great. It has very low levels of, low decibel levels, such that, so the daytime residential area decibel limit is 60 decibels, which is, if you're having a conversation, you're violating the noise or our ordinance. So we're gonna look at how to make that more effective, because I think it is so low as to be useless. So we want to increase that to a level that is something where we can differentiate between a nuisance and something that's just part of daily living. But we're also going to look at some of the wording in this as well over time. So I look forward to bringing that to you at some point in the near future. And with that, I'm happy to take questions. Sorry for the meandering.
No, it's fine. A couple of things I just want to ask and point out. So let's say someone is violating this at night. Are the police the mechanism?
The police are the mechanism,
Because
the only
our
mechanism.
health department is not picking up the phone.
That's correct, yeah.
And so so that someone could call the police and the police have been given this document, so they're aware that this is a violation at this point. We're not gonna.
They can't enforce the nuisance.
They
so
cannot
we're the
enforce.
only ones who can.
So how would somebody who has, because clearly it spells out in here that there are nighttime decibel restrictions as well, how would someone get evidence to community development that that was happening at night?
Well, I guess I would say if we knew in advance, my staff and I are happy to go out. We can make a special time to go out and run the test.
So
it's a
would
simple
you
hand
be
order.
able to enforce something from a video? If there
I
was,
don't think so, because we wouldn't be able to test that decibel limit.
and we don't have an on-call system. Because the problem here is that if you have somebody who comes and runs he runs his generator from 10P to 7A and shuts it off and then goes on a long trip, the surrounding neighbors aren't going to know when he's coming back.
Right.
And he's clearly not handing out a schedule to get everyone ready. Yes, city manager.
So, in that case, it would be a noise violation.
That the police could.
That the police
Yes,
could
so-
enforce. So if it's a nighttime issue that's excessive noise, we do, the challenge they have had is we have a timeline, depending upon where you are in the city. The timeline's a little different for Zone A, which is our downtown district. But in other zones, we have Zone B, it's between 10 PM and 6 AM. So there are some guidelines that they can enforce, and then in Zone A, it's 10 PM and 7 AM. So if it's a nighttime violation, he's there, it's excessive noise, it's a noise violation. If this is something that continues in a neighborhood and it's during the day because there's no restrictions of noise during the day in our noise ordinance, this is a nuisance violation through the fourth floor.
I also want to add that if the truck is parked there, and I didn't want to say pictures were okay, but if the truck is parked there, that's a violation of a separate part of the zoning code. You can't park a commercial vehicle overnight in a residential, at a residential house. So-
Okay, great. So is it your opinion that you feel like the ordinance, that you have enough teeth in the language that's here to continue addressing this to the
This particular,
satisfaction of the
yes.
neighbors? If the
Absolutely.
communication continues?
Yep.
Okay. Anyone from the committee have questions? Counselor Williams?
Yeah, just to say, this is pretty close to my neighborhood, and I can hear it, even with my crummy hearing, I can hear it from my backyard sometimes on Lincoln Street. And so it really affects, really, the middle of a very dense area. So I'm very glad that we found a way that we can address this. More generally, I've heard a lot of complaints in general about, commercial vehicles in residential areas, or, a lot of times, trucks will park at Robin Hood Park while they're, waiting to go pick something up, or, you've got a job in, an hour, so you're just killing time. I wonder if there's, a place where these vehicles could go where any noise they made wouldn't be such a problem. Maybe there'd even be bathrooms there for them to use, picnic table, place where people who are in commercial vehicles could go and not be interfering with others. I think that's probably in the long term would be a good way to solve something like this.
Maybe Lincoln Street.
It's too late for jokes, Counselor Jones. Counselor Ormerod?
Thank you. I'm going to ask a nerdy question that former counselor and possibly future counselor Mike Jacopo would appreciate, and also Phil Jones has suggested similar things. Jesse, did I hear you say that you have a instrument, a meter that reads the decibels, okay? Does the police department have that access to that same device so that they could actually make a determination and issue a fine?
No, so our noise ordinance is not written with a decimal requirement.
The overnight.
It's a judgment call of the police department when they arrive at a scene.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to add,
No,
Counselor?
I was going to say that.
Any other questions from the committee? All right. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, I would be open for a motion. Counselor Williams? Sorry, we're jumping around a little bit.
Move to recommend accepting the communication noise disturbance from a commercial vehicle generator at 58 Grant Street as informational.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Counselor Williams, second by Counselor Jones. Do we have any questions on that motion? Anyone from the public? So, Mrs. Joyce, I would just say, please communicate with the letter writers that the department does feel like they have a mechanism, and then if you can always reach out to the city manager if you aren't able to get a hold of somebody and get them out there in an appropriate amount of time. But definitely don't let it go. It does sound like it's pretty problematic, and I want to get it cleared up for you. All right, seeing no questions on those motions, I'm ready for a vote. All in favor? And that one is unanimous as well. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our agenda tonight. Let's see where we are. Looks like we've made it to the Let It Shine request to use city property for the 2024 Pumpkin Festival. So former Councilor Giacomo has sat through another PLD meeting, even though he didn't think he was going to do that again.
Don't think that's a formal title, former counselor. Mike Giacomo, 615 Hurricane Road. Here tonight representing Let It Shine. Thank you, Madam Chair and councilors. We're providing you with a proposal. I sent you a letter. Hopefully you've all had a chance to peruse that. I put in bold the major changes from last year's festival. There will not be too many. I'll highlight some of the more significant ones, though. Last year was really, by any measure we could have, a great success other than the weather, which was miserable. But everyone had a good time regardless, albeit a damp good time. So we're hoping for better weather this year, but we didn't see any reason why that we would want to make any real changes to it, because we thought that it was actually went along pretty well organized. Well attended. People seem to enjoy the scope of activities and the scale of activities, most importantly. So the major changes for this year, the date is the biggest one. We had a number of meetings with the president from Keene State College, along with city manager, chief police, Court Blomquist was part from Public Works as well. And we had a number of meetings both, again, before and after last year's festival, mostly regarding public safety for some of the before meetings, and then afterwards it turned to also what can we do to work better with the college and with the city. And it was determined that having the festival the same weekend as Parents' Weekend, we thought was a very clever idea, and it had been tossed around for a decade, that this should be done because you have built-in police with the kids' parents, was actually not a great idea because Keene was already really full of people that weekend because all the parents are in town. So it actually strained the city's resources more having it that weekend. So we are changing it to the weekend prior to that, which would be October 12th. This weekend now aligns with the fall break, and Keene State said they have many, many, many fewer students on campus during that weekend, which means that their resources can be freed up to help assist with some festival stuff, as well as the KPD would have less resources that they would need to worry about diverting over to Keene State's campus as well. So that's the biggest change that's going to impact a lot of people is the change in the weekend. A couple other minor changes we're considering, the number of craft vendors. Turns out they don't take up as much space as we thought they did. So we'll be increasing the number of craft vendors. They'll still remain on Main Street in the parking spots contained within the footprint. The footprint itself, we have no need to or plans to change that. However, in protocol meeting, there's currently discussions on whether or not it makes sense for the closed off area, which is technically part of the footprint, but we have no need to, or we're not putting pumpkins down that far, but to close it at Emerald versus Gilbo is under discussion. We aren't necessarily asking for it, but we're saying if the city decides it makes more sense to close it off there for traffic flow, it would eliminate a pretty nasty S-curve at Gilbo, which actually blew out a couple tires during the Food Fest 2 years ago. So in order to facilitate traffic flow, we offered that up, but again, we won't be using that part of the street for any active pumpkin stuff. And then beyond that, the rest of the festival, no major changes. And in fact, we're in the process right now. Our board's in the process of actually codifying in a mission statement, basically for Let It Shine, statements that will, in perpetuity, contain the festival to a specific size based on what we're trying to accomplish. And that includes elimination of hunting for records. That includes not bringing in carnival rides and stuff like that. So we're working on some of the details on that still, but it's another thing that came out of those meetings with the city and with the college. So we're cognizant of everything that's happened in the past, and we don't want to see it repeated any more than anyone else. So we do want to see what happened last year repeated, though, except for the weather. Yes. So that's what we're planning for, and we hope you guys will approve the license. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. City staff, yep.
So I just want to thank former Councilor Mike Giacomo and the Let It Shine board, because we did have a conversation about concerns related to the timing of the event and what was already happening in the community. And Keene State College, the President Treadwell was very concerned about that as well. And this really alleviates those concerns. So I appreciate it. It was a big ask for us, and we're grateful that they were able to accommodate that. The other thing is related to the size. While we have great comfort in the group that's planning these events right now, and we've had some good success, it would be great to sort of document that for the future, the intent of the festival. Festivals are really important to our downtown and to our community, and they really help to keep our Main Street vibrant. But there is a tipping point where a festival could become burdensome to the municipality, but also to the neighborhoods and to the community. So I think the Let It Shine board has been very cognizant of that and worked with us, and I'm very grateful that they have.
Great. Any questions from the committee? So, I would just like to, for full disclosure, I was on the board in the previous years. That in February I did roll off. The festival last year was amazing. I got to participate in getting all the pumpkins to the schools and back down. Lots of waterlogged, wet, sopping pumpkins. And the families came out and loved it, and it was great. And we had lots of kids in galoshes. And the Friday, setting the pumpkins up on Friday was an equally wonderful experience for the community. As we were setting up and through that evening, there were tons of families that probably may or may not have come down for the festival, but came down and found their pumpkins, and it was really nice to see it come back. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do this year. All right, do we have anyone from the public who wants to speak about this? Oh, I thought I saw a shifting, okay. Though those chairs do get uncomfortable. Yes,
If I may, Madam Chair, yeah, we, at the end of the day, and this is kind of the same words that I used for city manager and and Keene State presidents, was that we recognize that if we don't build a sustainable model, we don't have a festival, we don't have an organization. So it is imperative for our organization, our nonprofit organization's survival, to make something that is sustainable moving forward. And so it was really a no-brainer for us to work on some language to make sure that it actually stays that way, and we don't get to the scope that we did before. As fun as people might have had at it, it outgrew what we had the ability to really manage, I feel.
yeah. Well, and personally, I got to witness you and the thought and the effort that you put into making sure that those safeguards were put in place. And I entrust that that's going to carry on as long as you're there. So without any questions or comments, I think I'm ready for a motion. This one's yours, Councillor Jones.
We usually give these to the new guy.
I don't know, it's a tough one.
I want to start off with thanking the former honorable counselor, and he's still an honorable man.
Keep adding titles to me.
I would move to recommend the license be granted to Let It Shine, Inc., to use downtown city rights-of-way on Saturday, October 12, 2024, to host the Keene Pumpkin Festival, subject to the following provisions. And we have 10 bullet points here. The license is granted based upon the event scope presented to city staff during protocol meetings held to date. Changes or additions to the license may require that an amended license be issued by the city council, and no changes to this license or the associated protocol documents will be accepted after September 1, 2024. The petitioner agrees to absorb the cost of any city services over and above the amount of city funding allocated in the fiscal year 25 community events budget, and agrees to remit said payment within 30 days of invoicing. The furnishing of a certificate of liability insurance in the amount of $1 million, naming the City of Keene as an additional insured. The signing of a standard revocable license and indemnification agreement and associated protocol documents. That the footprint and layout for the event shall encumber the travel portions of Central Square, Main Street, both sides from Central Square to Emerald Street and Eagle Court, and a portion of Railroad Street. Road closures may include any portions of the other streets needed to facilitate detour routes. The full extent of road closures and the detour routes shall be agreed upon the city staff and will include any closures necessary to facilitate safety during pre-event setup and post-event cleanup activities. The petitioner is permitted to use Railroad Square vendor spot for pumpkin drop-off by the area schools on Friday, October 11th, 2024. The actual event will be held from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. with the times for setup and cleanup to be established with city staff. The submittal of a signed letter of permission from any private property owners for the use of their property. The free parking be granted under the provisions of the free parking policy for city parking spaces needed for logistical purposes beginning Tuesday, October 10, 2024 at 6 a.m. and extending through Monday, October 14, 2024, and spaces within the event footprint on the day of the event, and said permission is granted subject to obtainment of any necessary licenses or permits and compliances with any law and compliance with any recommendations of city staff.
Second.
Motion by Councillor Jones, second by Councillor Ormerod. Does anyone have any questions on that motion? Councillor, or
Do you need to read
Mr.
it again?
Giacomo?
No, I think there is one correction on there. The Railroad Square on Friday for pumpkin drop-off will not be utilized this year. We're planning on using the western northbound lane of Main Street.
Which was more ideal last year, yeah.
Yeah, so
And
that,
practical.
I believe that motion was, I think it was, some of that was copied from last year where we were planning on using Railroad Square. It was not a good place to try to do that. So the western northbound lane from Railroad Square to Central Square would be the encumbered lane on Friday for pumpkin drop-off by schools.
So do you want us, that bullet reads that the petitioner is permitted to use Railroad Square vendor spot for pumpkin drop-off. If they don't need it, is it fine for them just to not use it? But do we have to strike it from the motion?
Yeah, or just amend the motion to include pumpkin drop-off in the, what lane,
As long as the western northbound lane of Main Street is included in there, then you can leave the
Yeah.
railroad part in, and
okay.
we'll find something fun to put in that spot.
I think we'll have to
Okay.
amend the motion. So I will move to amend that bullet point that read that the petitioner is permitted to use Railroad Square vendor spot for pumpkin drop-off by area schools on Friday, October 11th, 2024. Read that the petitioner is permitted to use the northbound inside lane of Main Street on, for pumpkin drop-off by area schools on Friday, October 11th, 2024.
Second.
So this is a motion on the table in regards only to the amendment of the full motion that Counselor Jones read in to. Do we have any questions about that? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor of the amendment? And that is unanimous. So we're back to our full motion at this time. Does anyone from the public have any questions? Anything else in there, Mr. Giacomo? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. All right, I think it's Luca's turn. Let's see, we have Luca Paris and the Greater Monadnock Collaboratives request to use parking spaces for classic cars on May 5th, 2024. And thank you for sticking around as well.
I stayed for the chocolate.
Yes, I asked the clerk, I said, I'm going to be here for a long time. Can you please provide snacks?
So this has been brought to you guys before, and it was sent back to protocol. And we're looking to bring back cruising Main Street, and that's the idea of bringing back classic cars to Main Street. It's something that's been part of this community for years before I got here. And then the idea kept being floated to me as something that the community wanted to see again. And now in my new position as the president of the chamber, I feel like we have a great partner with Monadnock Ford to make this happen. So I think we went back to protocol, answered all the questions that that you guys had, this committee has had. And I feel, along with, I know Andy Bohannon's here because he might be the only person left from the city here, besides, of course, you guys, that was in that protocol meeting, that would answer any of those questions. But I think we've satisfied a lot of the requirements or the questions, and I'd be happy to answer anything else going forward.
All right,
To keep
and I
it
know
short.
that you did meet with MSFI,
Yes.
and we do love to see these events happening in downtown. It brings people downtown, it gives them access to the businesses downtown, and gives us back that vibrancy. We have seen some cracks where we have events happening that don't have street closures, and so I know that there was some concern that we just make sure that the safety of all the citizens are taken into account, and sounds like you've done that. Do we have a report from staff with any, is Andy here to speak to this tonight, or are you on tap for this one?
I guess I just want to say that I'm appreciative to the sponsor of this event for listening to our feedback and coming back to the table willingly to talk about what it might look like to create a bit more safety for the spectators. When this initially went before MSFI and had its first protocol meeting, we hadn't received some feedback from the Ice and Snow Festival about just the location of the sculptures and how people were in the roadway. And, that was one of our concerns. And then also, being graduation weekend, we were concerned about the traffic and the number of people. And so this went back to protocol, and they worked out a plan which includes some partial closure or lane closure to provide some additional space. I think that works brilliantly. I think they addressed all of our concerns, and I think the protocol committee is satisfied with that. There is some additional expenses the sponsor will have to pick up as a result of that. I think it was just over $2,000, and they've agreed to do that.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have any questions from the public on this one? Okay.
Yeah, I was like, no.
All right, so I'm going to be looking to Councilor Ormerod for a motion.
Well, I think I've gotten over my allergy to either special dark chocolate or classic cars, so
Wow.
let's give it a shot. It is my pleasure to move on behalf of the planning, licensing, and development company to recommend that the Greater Monadnock Collaborative be granted a license for the use of city property on Railroad Street and designated spaces around Central Square and down Main Street to conduct a classic car show event on Sunday, May 5th, 2024, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. The applicant is permitted to close off the outer lane of Central Square and the outer northbound and southbound lanes of Main Street to Railroad Street to provide a buffer deck for pedestrians viewing the cars on display, as well as a portion of Railroad Street from Main Street to the westerly entrance of the 12th Street parking garage if needed. The permission is granted subject to the signing of a revocable license and indemnification agreement, submittal of a certificate of liability, insurance in the amount of $1 million, listing the city of Keene as additional insured, as general of signed letters of permission from the owner of any use of private property, and compliance with any recommendations of city staff. The license is subject to the Greater Monadnock Collaborative absorbing the cost of any city services provided. Use of the parking spaces is granted free of charge under the provisions of the free parking policy.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Counselor Ormerod, second by Counselor Jones. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Just one, since this is Cinco de Mayo, will Luca be wearing a sombrero?
It's a requirement.
Is it?
We can add it to the motion.
You know, I'm not afraid, so we might make it happen.
All right. Now I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous.
All right. Thank you all very much.
So I just want to look to the committee at this point. It's about 20 minutes past 9. Does anyone need a break? I think we might be able to pull this out in about 20 minutes if we stick to it. Are we good to go? All right, so items 8, 9, and 10. Can you turn on your microphone, please? Items 8, 9, and 10, I'm going to take together. We will have separate motions on them all, but I think we can discuss them all at the same time. 8 is operating rights agreements with Monadnock Choppers, flight training, and we'll be hearing from the airport director for that. Number 9, operating rights agreements with Monadnock Choppers aircraft maintenance service, and we'll be hearing from our airport director about that. And then airport land leases with Monadnock Choppers associated with their operating rights agreement, and we'll probably be hearing from both city manager and the airport director about that one. So do you want to go through these 3 things with us?
Sure, absolutely. Dave Hickling, Airport Director. And you're right, all 4 of these there's 3 agenda items. There'll be 2 operating rights agreements and 2 leases are all tied to Monadnock Choppers. Monadnock Choppers has been in business at the airport now for a little over 4 years.
So just before you keep going, I just have to correct you. There's only 3 showing up on my agenda.
Right, 3.
Those made public.
But there's 2, one of them includes 2 different leases. There'll be
Okay.
2 separate leases in one of
Perfect.
the agenda items.
Got it.
16 and 17.
Okay.
So, yeah, Monadnock Choppers started about 4 years ago, doing really good. When they started, they only wanted a 2-year operating agreement with a 2-year renewal because they want to make sure the business would get running well. It's doing very well. He's very successful. And what happened is one of his ground leases has expired. And what he wanted to do is get both of his leases and both of his operating agreements running concurrently. So what we want to do is make these all running together. It'll be the 2 operating agreements, one for providing flight training services and the other for aircraft maintenance services. And the 2 land leases are for hangars that he owns. We lease the land that the hangars are on, and he uses both of those facilities to operate his business. We negotiated the lease with him, going with our airport land leasing policy, followed that policy, and came to an agreement on some lease terms.
All right. And Elizabeth, you're happy with everything, the way it's worked out?
Yes, so Monadnock Choppers has been a great addition to the airport. Very responsive organization to any complaints or concerns that we've received, which really have not been about their business. It's really been about other helicopter operators. But they've been a great tenant. Very happy that they want to continue their operating agreement and remain in their footprint. And we were able to negotiate a rate to bring it in line with the other agreements with the same circumstances. So yes, I'm very much in favor of moving these agreements forward.
Great. Any questions from the committee? No? Seeing none, I would look for a motion. Counselor Haas?
I move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute an operating rights agreement with Monadnock Choppers to provide flight instruction at the Keene DeLaunt Hopkins Airport.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Haas, second by Counselor Ormerod. Any questions on that motion? Counselor Williams?
Just to say that I know when Monadnock Choppers moved in, there was a lot of concern that it would be a problem, and I'm glad that those concerns have not panned out.
And we're really short on public comment tonight. Counselor Ormerod?
Yes, it was really a concern, and it was in my ward, and we had many, many people on both sides, for and against. So I'm very pleased the way that our airport manager and city manager have managed the relationship and the positive PR we have in the community. So thank you very much.
Great. So we do have a motion on the floor. Not seeing any questions, I would ask if we're all in favor. And that one's unanimous. Number 9, Counselor Haas?
Yes, I move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute an operating rights agreement with Monadnock Choppers to provide aircraft maintenance at the Keene DeLaunt Hopkins Airport.
Second.
All right. Motion by Counselor Haas, second by Counselor Ormerod. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Number 10, Counselor Williams?
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to execute airport ground leases with Monadnock Choppers for lots 16 and 17 to conduct business at the Keene DeLaunt Hopkins Airport associated with their operating rights agreement.
All right, any questions on that? Oh, thank you, Counselor Jones, for stepping right in there. After 9 o'clock, it starts to get more difficult. We have a motion by Counselor Williams, second by Counselor Jones. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that one is unanimous as well. And don't go anywhere, because our item number 11 is relating to the Airport Development and Marketing Committee, Ordinance O-2024-03. And this, I believe, is also in regards to some changes to the board structure, if I remember correctly, reading through it.
Right.
Do you want to give us a little
Yep,
tune-up on that?
Absolutely. So the Airport Development Marketing Committee works with me on exactly that marketing and airport development guidance on that for the airport. In the past, we've been having trouble meeting quorum and also having problem filling vacant seats when they come up. So we looked at doing some rewording of the ordinance. A couple of things we wanted to address here. One is reducing the seats from 11 to 7. We think that's going to help with that. We did want to make the fixed base operator who owns Monadnock Aviation. That is a business that the airport really relies on the services they provide. And the way it's worded now, they would time out, so they would run out of appointments and not be able to sit on that committee. So we would like to make that so they're always on that committee. Another thing we wanted to address was the residency we had. A lot of the members had to be residents of Keene, which really hurt us trying to fill the seats. So what we want to do now is make it so that if they have a certain skill set that would bring a lot to this committee, that would waive that citizenship requirement. We also want to change the language so that I could be the chair, we've had problems before having people volunteer to be the chair, so I would end up doing it. So we'll change the language to make that in there too. I think that covers most of the changes we have in there. So.
City manager?
Yeah, and I will just add, when going back to the residency change, a lot of the users of the are not residents. So the airport's located in Swansea. We have a lot of tenants who are very engaged and active at the airport, but they may not be Keene residents. And that was another reason why we wanted to have some flexibility, because they may have a relationship or a knowledge that we need on the committee to help us market and advance the airport. And then the other thing is, and I wrote a little flexibility for me in there so that it's my city manager designee, but I'm almost always an ex officio member. I'm not a voting member anyways. And so, but it's a nice tie. And having Dave be able to chair and organize the meeting, get the agendas ready, takes a lot of the burden off the volunteers.
Yes, I know there's been a lot of conversation around chairing and the proper way to do it, and I think that if you have somebody who's consistent doing it, that's helpful, and it lets the members really dig into the work. All right, do we have questions? Yes, Councilor Ormerod.
Just a question for clarification. I think it's a good idea to allow non-residents in there. And I think on the Energy and Climate Committee, we have non-residents, including someone who was very influential in Walpole, served for a while, and he used it to learn and to go and create a movement up there. So I think that's a really good idea, to have non-residents on this committee.
Great. Anyone else? Councilor Jones.
I just think it's important, it wasn't mentioned, but it's in there, that although he's the chair, he's a non-voting chair.
Yes, correct.
So the public understands that it's not a member of the city staff who's voting.
Yes, that's a great point, item to point out, for sure. All right, anyone else? Okay, so I think I'm probably ready for a motion on this one. Councilor Jones. You got the easy one tonight.
Oh, thank you. Move to recommend the adoption of ordinance O 2024-03.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Jones, second by Councilor Ormerod. Any questions on that motion? Seeing none, I would ask for a vote. All in favor? And that one is unanimous. So we did make it to the end. It is just about 9:30. I thank you all for sticking around with us. And we will see you guys back next week. We are adjourned.